Welcome, everyone, to another episode. I'm very happy to be here with all of you, and especially that I have an amazing guest here with me today. Her name is Kelsey Cannon. I already had the pleasure to meet her in person twice when I was in Seattle. It was such a delight. And I'm just going to introduce you. But first, I want you to just say hi. I'm so happy to have you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. And thank you so much, Annalena, for having me. I I have been a fan of your podcast. And of course, you and I connected, I think it was at some point last year. And so just being connected with you has been such a huge gift for me, both personally and professionally. So yeah, I'm super stoked to hear kind of where our conversation goes and what we get to share with the audience.
Yes, and you get to listen to our episode soon when it's being released. So let me tell you a little bit about Kelsey. So she was a pelvic floor physical therapy specialist for over 12 years and noticing many women struggling with validation in traditional medicine while also juggling a lot of responsibilities. She really emphasized with that, and her journey led her to challenge the work harder, gain more mentality that we so often see in today's society, especially for women 35 plus, also navigating perimenopause. And through her exploration, Kelsey gained a deeper understanding of women's innate bodily intelligence. And surprisingly, her entrepreneurial journey revealed the need for healing her relationship with money, also to feel physically safe and grounded. And now Kelsey creates a space for women to self-advocate, restore their relationship with their bodies, and redefine their boundaries in various aspects of life. And her goal is really to help women enjoy the freedoms of their bodies and live without confusion, stress, and exhaustion, really to enjoy life, right? Get out there, have fun, and take it all in.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Amazing.
So I would love to hear from you. Maybe let's go back to when we first connected. I think it was sometime last year. We did a human design reading. I think that was kind of the first step. So how did that impact or change your journey in some way?
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm still formulating like words to what has gone on the last year or so in my life because I've been kind of coursing through a lot of depth in terms of like you mentioned my relationship with money and kind of who I am as a human, as a woman in this modern day society, and who I am in my work and my relationship with my husband. And so so reversing back about a year, I had a lot of people mention to me human design, and I was like, okay, what is this? And finally somebody um, who I was really kind of vibing with, she's actually a medical provider turned weight loss coach over um, in Europe, and she was like, oh, I feel like I might know what you are, and I feel like you've got the projector energy. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what that means, but let me like finally look into this. And so I did. And somehow, very soon after kind of like pulling my charts in human design, I stumbled upon you. And it didn't take me very long to realize, well, this is a really new world to me. And I love to collaborate with others. And I know that's when I learn the best is when I have kind of a soundboard and somebody who's kind of gone before me in a certain territory. And I signed up for a private human design reading with you. And that was at the time when I was getting ready to, my husband and I were getting ready to relocate back to the Seattle area. And so you and I had kind of a few different connections related to that. And, you know, when you sat down and kind of read my chart and kind of described different elements of my chart, it just, I felt so validated in so many ways in terms of why I didn't like air quote fit within the traditional healthcare realm, why I am, you know, choosing to gravitate towards the way that I work with women in terms of like intuitive medicine, intuitive healing, but also still using the awesome science that we have. Um, so all that just to say, I felt very validated to realize that I haven't been wrong this whole time because I, I I think like many women, we you know we're not traditionally trained to use our voices and like tap into our intuition and know what we want and why we want it. And so departing from that kind of traditional hyper masculinized model of living and working was a big journey for me. And I questioned a lot of it, but I also knew I was on track. So all that just to say, our private session was really helpful to realize you're on track. And I'll never forget when you said, Kelsey, I think a lot of your chart is you be you. you be you. And I was like, that was like the permission that somehow I still wanted that like external voice telling me that.
Mhm. I love to hear that. Yeah, it's so interesting. The human design is actually so simple, if you ask me. But in essence, that's what you described. We're looking for some validation or some confirmation that we somehow know something deep inside, that there's something off with what we think we should be and what feels really true within ourselves. And then we get the reading or we look at our chart or have somebody tell us some details and we're like, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm okay. I should trust myself anyways. And then, yeah, we need that permission slip. And I think we all need that. And it's, you know what, it's okay. I think obviously human design came into the world for a reason. And that's always what lights me up so much with this work because, I mean, you have obviously some genius to share with the world. You have a special gift. And when we force ourselves into something else just to please society or, you know, fit in some way, then we're not really utilizing that gift that we have.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I felt like human design, or at least that the entry point of where I kind of started to study it, and it's evolved since then. I'm sure we can talk about
Mhm.
that, but it really helped give framework as to like what I was feeling and why, and to it provided a lot of excitement towards moving in a direction that felt uncertain, and potentially unpaved. It was kind of the road less traveled, and so it really helped provide that extra level of excitement and kind of just intuitive inner knowing that like it's safe to pursue the uncertain road.
Uh,
And I found so many parallels between my life and the struggles that the women I tend to work with, in terms of you reach your 40s and you haven't yet probably given yourself the opportunity to reevaluate, who am I, what do I want? Because shocker, what you wanted 20 years ago or even 5 years ago may not be what you want now. And so the question becomes, okay, where do we go with that? How do we use that information to kind of take practical and heart-centered steps towards where we're headed?
mm. So one thing that I really love that you mentioned is that it's safe to be in the unknown or the uncertainty, something along the lines you mentioned. And that is so powerful because we humans, I think we buy often into things because we have this illusion of certainty. Why, the more I think about it, there is nothing is certain,
Mm-mm.
absolutely nothing. And when we can just trust that things are unfolding, and when we also have an inner knowing, even though we have no scientific proof whatsoever that my inner knowing is to lead to a certain outcome that I think I need. But what if I just trust myself, I actually get to create something that is so amazing that I cannot even comprehend at this point because it's so magical. It's in that big field of possibilities and the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah, and we could talk about that probably all hour in and of itself, where that was one thing that when I entered entrepreneurship, now that I've lived through the last 4 years of entrepreneurship, I didn't know what how people say, I don't know what I don't know, but it's like you can't fathom how actually great it could be for you.
Mm.
And I feel like when you just recommit to that sense of trust every single morning, and some mornings are harder than others, that I know it's not a, linear, perfect pathway, but yeah, I think it's such a recommitment where it's like you realize if you can just reserve enough, or how do I say, it's like if you can just suspend doubt long enough to tap into that kind of field of potential, whether you're dealing with a job change, a relationship change, a decision of should I go on hormone replacement therapy or should I not? What do I eat this morning? Like it's suspending doubt long enough to make sure that your intuition can kind of shine.
Mm. And I mean, this is so powerful for entrepreneurship. Let's talk about this a little bit further because the one learning lesson, I also used to call it a mistake. In the beginning, I made so much, and I think so many of us, is that we are looking for certain ways how to build our business. And there are so many of us out there that market that to us in some way, right? I have this one way how you can be very successful. And I know I bought into this. I always got out of it with a lot of disappointment, with a lot of frustration, because what it didn't allow was for me to be myself and actually trust my intuition, because you really have to follow a certain step and do it and force it in some way to, I think you can make it happen money wise in some way, but then it feels out of integrity with who I am. I don't enjoy it. Is that worth it? So in a way, I was also grateful that those things never quite worked out for me. And ultimately, everything that I learned, anything that I took on from other teachers, always made me realize, well, I better trust myself, because that's where I saw the most flow in my business. That's where I tapped into more joy into my business, really doing it the way that everybody else told you not to do.
Yeah. Oh, I had very similar experience where I appreciate all the mentorship that I've willingly, kind of
Yeah.
chosen to follow or chosen to kind of have in my world. But yeah, it's exactly what you said. I think when you start to hire people who are like, this is the way, it's the proven way, and XYZ is going to be your results, you start to sound like them, look like them, and you lose your essence and your energy. And to me, and this is what you've really been an amazing mentor for me and my business, especially. It's letting your own voice, your own essence shine through, because that's going to be that like message that kind of sends out to the world from like the highest good of all. Um, and it's so much more simple because you don't have to rack your brain about what you're supposed to write that day or what you're supposed to do. And it just, yeah, I'm a big fan of keeping it simple and sustainable and fun and enjoyable. And I think that when we get down to the heart of hearts, it's like, if you be you,
Yeah.
which sometimes can feel like the hardest thing because, again, we're not really told to be us all that often,
Yeah.
or we don't know how without fear of disappointing people. And that's been my experience of kind of that fear of rejection has played into things. But it's a practice like anything else. It's like it's a practice, and the people who are meant to support you and be in your audience and work with you, they start to bubble up to the surface even more strongly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that. I have positively influenced your journey with that, for
Oh,
sure.
yes, you have.
Yeah. So let's talk about your zone of genius. Like, what is your most authentic essence in the work that you do with women?
Yeah, yeah. Again, I'm still always developing my words around what it is I do and why it's maybe a little bit different. So the thing that I recently kind of have been coming around and around again to is that I tend to be somebody, because I stem from traditional healthcare and have more initials after my name than I care to admit, right? The alphabet soup. But in
Mm.
my heart of hearts, I just know the power of intuition and energy healing. And so I tend to blend the two worlds within women's health, where, there are practical strategies in terms of how we can holistically nourish ourselves, especially through perimenopause, because legitimately speaking, our sex hormones do begin to decline no matter who we are. And that certainly can have repercussions on our body's kind of hormonal circuitry and in the way that we feel and the way that we navigate life. However, the big missing kind of link that I think is kind of put into a black box, and it's like, don't mention it unless you're somebody who can fit on the woo-woo side. It's really truly helping women enter into that field of energy healing and tapping into their emotional kind of processing without worrying about always processing childhood trauma. It's what about the daily emotions that come up when we practice perfectionism and we grit through something but we know intuitively we shouldn't have, or the fear of disappointing people, the fear of rejection. What about that realm? And kind of shifting the shame and blame we feel over our bodies into more of a sense of curiosity of, what is my body trying to tell me? What is it saying no to? What does it want? And so blending the world of practical strategies with how to eat well for your body. And that's different for everybody, right? You see all the shoulds out there, but truly every single woman is so unique with what her energy needs are. How to move, when to move, what boundaries to set, but then also clearing the energy channels and really working with these kind of subtle energy bodies. Your intuition, knowing how it sounds to you, how it feels to you, because again, it'll be different for you than it is for me, and really holding space for how do we blend the two, kind of the the practical world and the energetic world to
Mhm.
help them mesh, to help you have a successful kind of perimenopause transition and beyond.
Yeah, I love that. The integration of the more masculine approach that we have and then the more feminine. And it's the same exact thing like we talked in the online entrepreneurial world where we have these proven programs that are gonna give us a
Yeah.
certain outcome. It's the same with nutrition.
Yeah.
Well, here is the diet that's gonna work for everyone, but like you say, we're all different, and
Yeah.
only through really experimenting and preferably having a mentor like you, right, that can help your clients to connect to their true essence and actually listen to themselves,
Yeah.
we can kind of figure out what works for us. And this kind of brings me now all to the topic of experimenting. This is
Mhm.
actually also something in the entrepreneurial journey. I had yesterday a conversation with one of my colleagues and friends as well about changing our minds.
Mhm.
And why we can say, oh, I'm so indecisive. I was like, if I change my mind a lot, I'm actually very decisive, right? Because I keep making new decisions all the time.
Yeah.
And at least because I try things out, hey, this works, this doesn't work. And we also, I know in our membership community, we had this throwing the spaghettis on the wall many times, also here in the podcast. And yeah, see what sticks for you. If we don't dare to experiment and try things out, I think we're really, really losing out on the joy of life because
Yeah.
if I just follow everybody's proven way that works for them, I think that's the biggest waste of time at the end of the day. I mean, yes, we can take some inspiration here, right? Obviously. But at the end of the day, we have to embrace our own experience, which there's always your unique essence involved. There's no way around it, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that is the through line, whether we're talking about a relationship with money or our bodies or with food or with our business.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do think when we like hook into that belief that somebody says, this is how you should do it. And that is everywhere. I mean, it is rampant. And I get like, I honor research. I honor the hard work that researchers have kind of done in the last 20 to 50 to 70 years or whatever. But at the same time, like, what about our unique essence? What about our soul's plan? What about our intuition in terms of what we truly feel like we need in that moment? I just think, what about that? It shouldn't necessarily, in my mind, be a hierarchy of I know better than you just because I have these initials. It's or have the business, like, just because I've made $1 million, I know how it goes. Like, we all know that experimentation is a part of the process, and like hooking into that belief of if this doesn't work, then I'm screwed. Well, that will be, I think, fraught more with like that inner resistance. And so it's like going with the flow and trusting,
Mm.
um, and knowing that if something doesn't work, you can make a small tweak. And sometimes that's going to get you where you want to go
Yeah.
or in pathway to do so. So it's so interesting to hear these parallels between business and women's bodies and how we approach both.
Yeah, it's so similar, right? And also what came up for me when you were talking is it's not that we are here to only be in the feminine and only to do the flow, but I feel like that has to come first. That does have to be the priority because it helps me. And this is something we have in the second gene key. It's about direction. When I can lean into the feminine essence, I can shift into the path that is my path, which is different from anybody else's. And then as I'm on this path, yes, as I know what may be right for you in terms of seeking help and support, there may be things like, hey, I'm going to show you how to set up a master class. This is how it works. These are the exact steps. That's now more the masculine energy, or all sorts of other things. I think that people have created, have written books about it, or that having programs about it. It can be so, so helpful. But for me, again, only in the context of like, overall, does this feel aligned with who I am? Do I know what I stand for? Do I speak my truth in my business and my personal relationships? That's really like the foundation of everything.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I feel like if we could have this as a part of a conversation for business owners, entrepreneurs who are just starting out, or like in my mind, women in their 20s heck, teens, if we can ask for that,
Yeah.
to kind of start to kind of talk about this, because it's going to strengthen people's abilities to navigate challenges, whether it's in business or in their health or relationships. And we all know it's all just so intertwined. And yeah, I love how you highlight it's both. Like we need both. We can't really have too much of one thing, because then it's a cattywampus
Mm.
system.
Yeah, and I think what always happens, I mean, we live in a world of polarity where we can easily fall into extremes. I know for myself in the very beginning of my business, I was trying to force it. I was focusing on these proven concepts that gave me this illusion of certainty. But I also needed the experience to realize, oh, okay, that's not it. And then I fell into the complete other extreme. I'm not going to plan anything. I'm just going to go with the flow and no strategies, whatever, And now I'm more in this integration phase where it starts to become a blend of
Yeah.
that trusting myself, going with the flow, not over planning, but having some structure, some strategy behind it. And also now as more and more systems are coming up that do make my life easier, because the reality is if I only create in the moment and go with the flow with certain things that I have in my business, it's going to be much more time consuming and also stressful in that sense.
Yeah, totally, 100%. I feel like that's where that experimentation comes in, is like you live and you learn, and we can't take that out of out of life. And I also think we're meant to learn certain lessons, and it's like these are like the shadow parts of our gene keys, where it's like these are really huge gifts when you start to learn this big, huge, valuable lesson of maybe what you didn't want, and then refocusing on what you do want. And I love how you kind of highlighted the fact of like that experimentation. You start to really recognize what works. And so you have this like framework. It's not rigidity. It's truly just helpful framework that you have decided works for you and your circumstances. And I feel like that's something that's resonated with me now that I'm coasting into kind of year five-ish of entrepreneurship and, intuitive healing and, navigating perimenopause through practical wisdom. I mean, yeah, what a gift the whole journey is, I guess, is what I can say.
Exactly. Yeah, that is true. Embracing the journey. And I would love to ask you if you're open to share a little bit of a story, because I know you have a good one, in terms of what happens when you actually trust your inner knowing, in terms of the opportunities you call in your professional life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I feel like I could write a book on this at this point, because I've always, since I was little, have had a very strong intuition. But again, I didn't always know what that meant. And then half the time I feel like I'm crazy because I shouldn't know this before it actually happens. No.
Mm.
Um, So, yeah, I feel like I've had experiences, especially recently, where you say yes to something. And I know I was sharing this with you, Annalena, when we were having coffee in person. And I said yes to a partnership that I led with curiosity. I was like, this has potential, and I wanted to be open. And lo and behold, it was not the partnership. I knew it, they knew it, and I woke up just in my body, like my body made the decision for me. And so, and I speak a lot about this within the work I do with women, is like your body is going to be saying yes and no to certain things. And like I was just rolling around in bed. I couldn't sleep. I had these like old threads of pretty extreme anxiety come back. And I just kind of questioned, what do you need? What do you need? And the answer was like, you need to depart from that relationship and partnership. And so I got up, and it was like 4 a.m. when I was like, okay, I'm done like rolling around like a rotisserie chicken. I need to go out and craft this email. I need to pause. So the power of pause is really helpful when you're navigating this kind of hard, challenging thing that you're kind of afraid to do.
Mhm.
And then I sent the email to this partner. And of course, in this moment of, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? What are they going to think? Um, you're just really being present with yourself. That was my experience, where I was like, it's okay if you're feeling the gamut of emotions. It's okay if your heart is racing. It's okay. Your body is designed to do this. It's coming out of a situation that it didn't feel good in. Um, so I used a lot of my nervous system kind of grounding and discharging kind of strategies. And I tell you what, after I received back an email from this person, and he was like, I fully agree. and I'm so glad you took the initiative. Like, it was kind of like, thank you, because I think that, the highest good of all is going to be served in X, Y, and Z. And I was like, I know, I'm so glad you agree. And so using that voice and discerning that, like, oh, sure enough, my body is not jiving with what I've got, whether it's work related, a relationship, whatever it is, a way of exercising, that's huge. Your body's going to tell you. And when you use your voice and you use it on your own best behalf, inevitably the right outcome for you is going to be manifested. And what happened out of that situation is an even better, more aligned partnership came along right away. And I had to close that up, that other one, in order to leave space and kind of energetic spaciousness for that other one to kind of come to fruition. And so I've seen this play out in my life where it does take immense amounts of trust, and inevitably you'll bobble. You'll say yes to things that you're like, oh crap, I shouldn't have said yes to that. What was I thinking? Well, sometimes you have to learn the same lesson over and over again, but it gets easier and easier.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a super fascinating journey to start to really listen and trust and discern, where do we go from here, and how do you trust the intentions that you've set when you don't yet see them? And that's huge in entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much trust. I was reflecting on it the other day that being an entrepreneur, especially the way I think we are doing it in a new way in some form with more intuition led decisions, not so much about what is logical and what makes sense. They're really learning to trust. That's such
Yeah.
a valuable gift, and even if that means in the short term I'm making less money than if I were to force myself into a proven process, but I think long term it's really building up a much more sustainable, a much more authentic, and so much more integrity path that can really serve the greater good of humanity. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I love how this ripple effect becomes clear when you trust yourself, like you say, the fears come up, it's going to be uncomfortable. That's where we're really being asked to step out of our comfort zone. And that's something we learn in human design from the spleen center. Feel the fear, do it anyways, because you just know, I have to do this. And then it also benefits so many other people. And I mean, in your situation, the person already was very, very thankful and nice and kind. It could be that the other person doesn't see it this way. It could be that they disagree or there's going to be some backlash. But I always think in hindsight, it's a win-win, and they will then see how it actually was also for their greater good with that as well.
Yep. Oh, yes. I couldn't agree more. Where I think as women, and I'm not saying our male counterparts don't have this, they do. We just have a different relationship with our feminine intuition, where a lot of times, I know for me, I see things before things happen. I can feel things. I can see where a trajectory is going. Like, this is kind of the art of being a projector of some type. Not that I'm putting myself in a box, but I also think that we all have this skill. It's
Yeah.
not even a gift, it's a skill. You just choose to kind of practice that. And so when we allow that other person to step into that kind of discomfort with us, no matter what the outcome is, it's like, just, stick with it. They'll see that this is for their highest good as well. They may not always like it, but they don't need to.
Mhm. Yeah, so true. And then the beauty is also that we are role modeling it and showing it to other people that it's possible. And then it's the best thing, I think, for all of humanity is everybody trusting themselves and
Yep.
actually taking those things that feel right. And trusting your intuition takes a lot of time and practice. For sure.
Oh, it does. Yeah. Yeah. It so does. Because you're not always going to have concrete, tangible, things that you can hold in your hands to say, oh, this is where I need to go. It's a feeling, it's a thought, it's a phrase in your own voice that you're like, is that just coming from my like regular brain, or is that my intuitive voice? And
Yeah.
it takes some time to understand that.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I wanted to say too that came up, you mentioned this earlier in terms of like, um, trusting yourself and knowing that, yeah, sure, there's framework in what you can follow with entrepreneurship when you're building programs and selling things. Um, and it's related to money, where one thing that I've realized is the more I trust my intuition and kind of what I want to create, and kind of calling in you truly do, you call in the women who resonate with you. Um, it's I actually charge less I care less about the money outcomes.
Mm.
And it's not, and I know finally I don't feel wrong for that because in entrepreneurship, there's always these like money goals that we feel like we have to achieve to be safe or to be kind of,
Mhm.
deemed successful. And I found that the more I play with it and the more I, truly just am there to serve the highest good of all in the, healthiest ways possible, including myself, it works out so much more effortlessly. There's
Mm.
less grip, there's less like anxiety around the thing.
Yeah, yeah. This is such a good point because I feel, and not that it's being done intentionally, but there's so much brainwashing happening, or almost conditioning happening in the self-development space or coaching space. Because I also know when I started, I put this pressure on myself. I have to charge like high amounts so that I can show my self-worth. Right away, when you weren't charging high ticket, you were made to believe that you don't feel worthy, you have self-worth issues in some sense, and I'm very like you that one of my values is that what I have to share with the world, I want to offer it at different price ranges. I want to
Mm-hmm.
have something low cost. Obviously, if it's my one-on-one time, that is more high ticket, obviously, because otherwise I get burned out and it's not sustainable with that in that sense. But I also totally I'm with you on that. And it has to, whatever number it is, it has to feel right to you. If it's
Yeah.
$20, if it's 77, if it's 111, if it's 5,000, there's no right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's just again, don't just do it because somebody else told you what to charge. Be empowered to do it your way. And sometimes it feels right to give somebody something for free, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote, you know, they're still investing the time. And I have literally seen people that literally didn't have the money and they were so thankful that I did some in-kind services. And then there are other times, yeah, you may see people that just want to have everything for free and they're going to take advantage for it and they're not going to show up for anything. That can also be, but we have such a tendency as humans to put everything in a box, to categorize everything. Oh, nobody that pays very little is going to show up. That is not true. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's talk about my membership.
Mm-hmm.
The Conscious Money Creators, it's very affordable investment, and you guys show up. You are on the calls, you ask questions, you're thankful. I see you guys transform immensely,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not because it's a high ticket. It's because you want to be there, I think you are actually taking action and implementing this stuff to you trust yourself more.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a great opportunity to be immersed in a group of like-minded individuals who have very different backgrounds. And it's not so much an echo chamber of like people just think the same. That's not it at all. There's a lot of variety in what we think and what we're feeling and what we are experiencing. But you've created this space to share that. And I feel like that's such a gift, when you're an entrepreneur to kind of craft that space, whether it's in a group format or a one-on-one format. And yeah, you can have tiered pricing. So that way, you know, all sorts of people can kind of enjoy the service for what it is. But it's been so powerful because you also have so many tools that I know for me, I like to implement before at all I teach anything. And
Mm.
so it's like, I like to be my own first client or my own continued client where you've given such beautiful tools and that space to have conversations and saying things that you wouldn't probably say to anybody else. Right. So a lot of the things that we talk about in the Conscious Money Creators group, I don't talk about even with my best friends because we're not talking about money
Mm.
as much, not in that frame of reference. And so it's really cool to have a space that you're talking about specific topics in a very unique way compared to what you would have like at the dinner table with your spouse or with a parent.
No, no, I love that. And what do you love besides the money conversations? Because you were mentioning the tools, because I know I don't talk enough about it sometimes. So
Yeah.
what do you appreciate about the community and the tools that are available?
Yeah. So and this kind of goes back to my kind of personal and professional bias within women's health is yes, I love to talk about how the liver works and how the thyroid and the gut connect and the brain and the nervous system, like those tangible kind of body system, sort of the way the body systems work. But
Mm.
for you, we talk a lot about like the sacral plexus, which in my world, or the root chakra even, that is where my traditional kind of expertise was lying in terms of the pelvic floor. Like that
Mhm.
area is so ripe for so much like creative energy and yes, physical tissue issues for sure. But there's a lot of like feminine energy down there. And so I love how you've brought kind of repeated nourishment for that in for me in terms of feeling safe in my like root chakra and in my pelvis and kind of giving grounding exercises through tapping and through kind of those like emotional release centers that we kind of highlight. And so your infinity healings have been really big because I'm a big believer in kind of moving the energy when it gets stagnant. And oftentimes for me, I can get really in my head, and it's like my head gets so big with thoughts I can't even fit through the door. And so
That's
I
funny.
really have to
Yeah.
like I really have to flush my system like literally every single day. And sometimes it takes 2 minutes, other times it might take 20. But your tools that you've provided, like the practical tools that help us like kind of get back in touch with our bodies and in our kind of energy fields, that's been really, really fun and engaging.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, I have to say, you're using it, right?
Yeah.
We can be in a container like this and we don't use the things that are available. But yeah, I have also found, even for myself, because the membership is now over a year, and this ongoing conversation about how we feel about money, how we get triggered, how we feel disempowered, how we do feel empowered. So we can have a confident relationship with money and how we talk about money. This all goes to promoting ourselves as entrepreneurs and putting our offers out into the world is so important. And so money doesn't become a taboo topic, because
Yeah.
we have these extremes, like with everything. We have the one extreme where there's only talking about money all the time, how to make 6 and 7 figures, and there's nothing else, very shallow. And then on the other hand, we have where people give everything away for free and they really don't feel worthy to charge even anything about for their services and stuff, right?
Mhm.
So that's also the Gene Keys talks about this. It's really about, and this is really what the essence of the conscious money creators is about, where you share your genius with the world, you create what comes from your most authentic self, you put it out there, even though you're scared or feel like nobody's interested in it. But like you say, people will start to find you that are drawn to who you are. It's not even so much about the offers you have, it's
Yeah.
you that they want to be in your energy, they want to learn from you. And there's always a reason why we come together. And then also feel worthy to have an energetic money exchange for that. So that you can feel confident in that, because money is also important. We have bills to pay, we have certain heart's desires we would like to manifest, and money often plays a big part with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that I have had so many ahas that have just kind of bubbled up to the surface without me trying to like seek for them. I think that's the amazing part about this type of collective is, what you're meant to learn will it'll bubble up to the surface. Especially the more that you nurture it and hold space for whatever it is. But basically, I come from a long line of very frugal, like Irish Catholics, and I didn't realize like how much generational trauma related to money and related to kind of fitting into certain boxes it just comes with you through the it comes with people through the decades. And
Mhm.
so, not that I want to put any pressure on myself to like release multiple generations of trauma. That's not it. But I think it's holding space for that and saying, hey, look, a lot of this was here before you even entered entrepreneurship. You're just here to kind of recognize and feel it and heal that pattern to whatever degree you can in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing that came to mind, Annalena, is we've been talking about this too, going from this like consumer mode into a creator mode. And this has been a main parallel with the women that I see in my practice is they've been consuming, they're trying to find the answers as to why their body has gained weight and despite eating well and exercising, why is their brain so foggy despite taking all the supplements, and why do they just not feel good, why are they waking up exhausted and they can never get sleep. Well, they're consuming so hard trying to find these answers outside of themselves, where when we craft a few, maybe even a few months of kind of tapping into this like kind of intuitive, kind of creative energy of kind of closing the door to a lot of the noise so that you can open the door to what's right for you. That is an absolute game-changing experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes on slowing down, taking a pause. Really, probably the concept of less is more always comes up with that, because oftentimes, yeah, we're trying to find the solution and then we actually get stressed in the process and we take way too many supplements our body cannot probably even take on or absorb in some form. That's such a good analogy. And it does come back to this, like you say, creating and actually taking the action and because being a creator is about that. Okay, I take the action, I try it out, I see what works, I see what doesn't work. And I think this whole trial and error has become so scrutinized, because I even know in human design, we talk about this mostly in regards to the manifesting generator archetype, or also the manifester, and then the three line in human design. It's about experimenting, trying things out. And it was through that I learned this is something that we all need. This is part of life. And it's not only for three lines, it really applies to all of us. And that's how we become wise. This is how we eventually become role models, where we actually learn what works. And I think the big responsibility we have, or at least that's the awareness that I want to create in the world, is that just because something worked for you, we have to be careful not to convince people that this must be the other person's path too. I mean, I think it's amazing to share our process. Like you and I mean, we're obviously sharing, but I always want to invite people, be discerning. Just because it worked for me doesn't mean it has to work for you. Maybe there are some things that I'm sharing that are going to be very helpful for you. But ultimately, you are here to find your own path. And this comes through creating, through taking action, to trying things out.
Yeah, I think that has been like the essence of what you just said, and the message has been a huge gift being kind of I think underneath your wing as like a in a sisterhood standpoint of you've been a major mentor of mine in business and in healing my relationship with money and in tapping into my own intuition where um you know just being mindful moving forward and knowing that there's really no right or wrong and like black and white, and that's kind of like the old model of working, kind of the old paradigm, and we're shifting into this new kind of um I view it as like a new paradigm of health, healing, of like higher consciousness for the world, depending on kind of where your listeners are in terms of like the spirituality element. It's bringing in more of that like defined feminine essence where certain things are going to work for certain people that may be more of a masculine feel, and that's okay. And
Mhm.
I think about this even with holistic health, where you see this where some people are like, oh, I don't want to use medications, that's bad. Well, they're actually, it can be really helpful for some people, or traditional medicine is not all bad. It
Yeah.
may not knock it out of the park in women's health, but like it's good for so many people. Like, holistic health is just one way to approach health,
Mhm.
just like some of the money kind of not money, but some of the business like programs that we see out there. That's one way to do it, but there's so many others.
Yeah, it's so true. It's all about finding the balance, and balance is also a word, but maybe a balance for me may not be a balance for you. And
Yeah.
I think it's all a learning lesson for us to get out of the extremes, because I so wholeheartedly agree with you that modern medicine has its place. It's saving lives every single day. And so does the more alternative approaches. It's about, hey, how can we work together, you know? But
Yeah.
it's so easy for us humans to get into this, like, this is all wrong, this is all right. It's this black
Yeah.
or white thinking, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's with everything in life. Like, we can see a tree and you may like, this is the ugliest tree I've ever seen. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the most beautiful tree I've ever seen, or vice versa. It's because we can be on totally different flip sides with
Yep.
things. And you may be in a challenging situation and you may see it as the biggest opportunity. And I mean, maybe like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? You know?
So true. So true. I mean, and I think about that, like all those years that I was essentially making myself wrong for who I was and what I would wear, what I would say, right? And coming out of that pattern, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like safe to use my voice. It's safe to be me. It's actually really fun.
Mm. Yeah.
And I also like in my marriage, like I want to do respect by my marriage and my husband, who I love very much. And it's like when he has a different opinion or thinks differently, don't make him wrong. And so it's a matter of like, it's just like this reciprocity, this give and take of we could both be, or quote, right, because it's what's
Yeah.
right for us. And so, and yeah, I think these themes show up in all elements of our life, and it's such a gift to just kind of become aware of, oh, that's a thing. Okay, got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Because truth is not that there is one truth that applies to everybody. It's like, what is Kelsey's truth? What is my truth? And then it's about having compassion, respect for each other, that we have different point of views, we have different experiences. What may work for one may not work for the other.
Yeah.
It's about being open-minded and flexible in our way of thinking and
Yeah.
appreciating it. That's also why life works, because we're all so different. We have different gifts and talents, zone of geniuses,
Mhm.
and we need that. If everybody had the same perspective, the same talents, we would live in a world that would be not moving anywhere, I think,
Yeah.
because everything would be the same, pretty boring. So
Yep.
let's appreciate our differences, uniqueness, different point of views, and use it in a way to challenge your own way of thinking. Because especially sometimes, I think when we judge somebody for their point of view and it really
Yep.
triggers, there's often something for myself, I find.
Yep. That's oftentimes a question I'll ask myself is like, why is that particular thing so triggering to me?
Mm.
Where I used to be, I'm going to willingly own this, used to be so dense, where like I feel like I had a very rigid way of thinking for so long. And while maybe that served me in certain ways to kind of, climb the professional ladder or whatever, it stopped serving me pretty consistently. And I started to get raging headaches and struggling with chronic fatigue and all the things that no human wants to go through. And so, it's been a gift to recognize when my own shadows are kind of coming up, and they will forever. They're going to be there. And so it's a matter of like using it as a learning experience. So that way it's not, I'm coming out of a phase of judgment and into a phase of curiosity for both myself and the other person or the
I love it.
circumstance.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. And then before we wrap up, I also want to just quickly mention, because you have been with me on the journey with human design and also now this cosmic or true sidereal human design. And I think you're now 2-4 manifesting generator in that
Yes.
scene, which is
Yes.
what I am in tropical actually. And how was that for you when you found out about that?
You know, um, kind of fun. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like I really identified with the projector kind of like essence and what that was. Is it tropical?
Yeah,
That's tropical,
tropical.
right? Yeah.
Mhm.
That really resonated. But, as with anything, there's a few gaps that you're like, oh, what about that? What about this? Right? Like curiosity is kind of a thing. And when you lead with that, when we studied True Sidereal, or when you kind of brought that to our attention, and suddenly I think a 2-4 Manny Gen, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense too, because I can get shit done, pardon my language. Like I definitely am one of these kind of women that I like to kind of go, I need a lot of space. I need a lot of elbow room, very intuitive, very kind of feminine energy based, but I can plug through, and be very focused for hours on end when it's the right thing. So yeah, it was really kind of exciting to say you get to have both. You can be both. There's no rigidity around here.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I'm not going to share it right now, but your charts are very similar. You have had an Ashna, I think, defined in both charts, and then your throat center connects to the G, and then all the way to the sacral, which in the projector chart, there's not the full channel to the sacral. So it's a very actually projector mani-gen chart in that sense. Your incarnation cross is very similar to mine in tropical, the right angle cross of the Sphinx, which is all about guiding people. Conscious sun is gate 2, very feminine energy. That's why again I come back to this. I really don't think we need the type so much because it's the chart. It's really
Yeah.
energies in the chart. And we find all the 5 types, like Manijan is about this experimenting. Gosh, we all need to experiment. We all here in a way to guide and listen to other people. So it's just so beautiful how also that helps us to have a more flexible, open-minded way of thinking with that.
Yeah. Yeah. The charts are really, really cool. I think anybody listening, if you haven't had a session with Annalena, it's really, really illuminating because it's confusing to look at. You're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at here and why this is that color and why that's not that color. And so, yeah, I learned a whole heck of a lot in terms of even like me adopting other people's emotions so quickly, like before I even consciously know it. Like that's in my chart. I'm like, oh, so it's not wrong. It doesn't make me weird. It just, I have a very like open channel through there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So, how can people get in touch with you if they feel a calling to perhaps work with you or explore the possibility?
Yeah. I am active on Instagram. My handle is at Kelsey Cannon DPT. And I also have a website that you can book a private call with me, a private consultation. It's just kelseycannon.com, first name, last name. And you can also, if you have questions about my monthly membership, much like Annalena has created the space for the conscious money creators, I've created a space for women called the Revitalized Collective. Happy to give you the invite, or you can also find it on my website or even on my Instagram page in terms of it's a space for women to come and really settle in, learn about legitimately their hormones, what's going on with all of the hormones, blood sugar stabilization, nervous system regulation, perimenopause, all the conversations that I think we're tending to miss out on in society. So yeah, holler at me through Instagram, or you can send me an email too. Emails on my website. So yeah, come one, come all.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure everything is gonna be in the show notes. And then my final question, which you probably know I ask everyone unless I forget it, what's the one thing that was so life-changing for you? We may have mentioned it already, but that one message you want to leave the
Mm.
listeners with.
I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier in terms of what you told me in our private session going on 9 months ago. And I've heard this from multiple other mentors in kind of same but different ways. And it's be you. Like own your voice. When you've got something to say, you can pause, but if you feel like you need to say it, you say it in the way that it's most uniquely you. And I think that's really a really powerful skill set, tool, and gift to practice every day.
Yeah, we so underestimate that. It's so simple yet so hard, but
Yeah.
I'm so with you. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you
Yeah.
for being here, sharing your beautiful energy, sharing your story. I always love chatting with you.
Thank you. Likewise, Annalie. It's been such a treat. And yeah, can't wait to stay in touch in all the ways.
Yeah, me too. And you listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And Kelsey, I hope you enjoy when you listen to our conversation. And as always, I'm super excited to be with you all on the next one.